This is Chris Barnes, and he is on the verge of perfection. He's a professional bowler who now has 11 consecutive strikes and is one strike away from a 300 on national television, a feat that, at the time, had only been done 21 times in the past 54 years. Shooting 300 is ridiculously difficult. 12 strikes in a row demands extreme focus, skill, and consistency. Shooting it live, on national television, is even more impossible.
Don't get many chances like this. Let's enjoy this one.
One shot away from history and a 300 game.
He is the 22nd to do it. Since the creation of the association, there have been 32 perfect games thrown on television. They are one-of-a-kind gems that place the nation's most skilled bowlers into their own elite club. Today, we're going to take a closer look at each game and the legends who shot them to honor the people who have fought their way into a very special Hall of Fame. It took a decade to happen, but the very first 300 on TV was in 1967, Jack Biondolillo versus Les Schisler. Typically, when it comes to the final 3 strikes needed for the 300, the average person would be a bundle of nerves, but not Jack. Apparently, he had full confidence in all of his 10th frame strikes, and that last strike was his best one yet. Looking at the video, I honestly gotta agree with him. Not a single one of these looks like it needed an ounce of luck to strike. But my favorite part of this first event is what happens after the 12th. Les Schisler, his opponent, practically tackles him into a hug and pulls him back to the rest of the competitors. Les just got the floor wiped with him, and now he's cheering. This right here is one of the best parts of bowling. You'll see this present from the very first 300 to the very last one. Unfortunately, this high did not last long. The next match, Jack faces against Mike Durbin and loses pretty bad. According to Jack, what caused the loss was that he drank a glass of ice water in between matches to cool off. A university football coach had tried to stop him but didn't get over there in time. He explained to Jack after the loss that cold water shocks the body in a way that knocks you out of the groove, and that's certainly what it looked like it did. I find it fitting that the very first 300 illustrates what I think are 2 constants of bowling. Even your opponents will be happy for you, and your next game will almost definitely suck. But not always. The next 300 in 1969, Johnny Guenther pummeled future Hall of Famer Don Johnson by over 100 in the San Jose Open, and proceeded to run the rest of the ladder and win the tournament. As it turns out, his next 2 opponents, Billy Hardwick and Wayne Zane, also go on to be Hall of Famers. All of that is irrelevant though, because after he shoots 300, he is mobbed by every athlete in attendance on the approach. And to top everything off, Johnny himself will end up being inducted into the Hall of Fame. I think he says it best when describing the feeling.
I don't know I can't explain how I felt throw that last ball. You couldn't hear a thing, and I was kind of trying to concentrate on how I threw the last 2 shots to throw the same shot again. It's nerve-wracking.
He's right. It's one of the most tense things you'll ever do in your life, and the pressure is sometimes too much, like what we see with our unfortunate opponent Don Johnson the very next year in 1970. Firestone Tournament of Champions, Saturday, April 4th. Don already has the match and the tournament locked up. Now he's simply chasing perfection. After having 300 shot against him the prior year, he'll be able to make his mark and add his name to the historic list and be the third to ever shoot 300. He has 11 in a row and is one away. Oh, that's unfortunate. This moment just happened to be captured by a photographer and quickly became the most replicated image in the bowling community, so much so that it became its own painting. Look at this. Don Johnson's televised misery encapsulated forever as a work of art. It really is perfect. It shows the heartbreak in missing perfection and how downright defeated it made him. Poor Don. Speaking of things going terribly wrong, we get to the real third 300 in 1974, where a lane breakdown tried to stop Jim Stefanich from his ultimate goal, forcing him to bowl on 2 lanes not adjoined. They normally would have bowled on 23 and 24, but instead bowled on 24 and 25. This might not sound like much to anyone who doesn't bowl, but to get consistent results, it helps a ton to have a controlled environment. This is not that. This is chaos, it's wonky, it's all sorts of wrong to every experienced bowler that has ever lived, and yet, he still managed. Adversity on the lanes is not the only thing you'll have to fight. Welcome to color television. In 1987, over a decade after the previous 300, Pete McCordick was having his own personal battle with bowling, and he wasn't winning. In 1975, Pete quit bowling because he was defeated. He'd only won about $5,000 across 2 years, and he wasn't enjoying it. After he quit, he worked over 80 hours a week as a lane manager in Houston, but after more than a year of being away from the competition, he couldn't stand being out any longer and decided to join again. Pete said in an interview that before the perfect game, he didn't think he was bowling that well, but then the TV lights came on and something changed. It had been 13 years since the last 300, the longest gap ever between 2 perfect games. He could have never come back. He would have still been working at that bowling alley in Houston, and this never would have happened. Bowling is almost never easy, and it is guaranteed to take a toll on you. Any of these bowlers fought through years of practice, of training, to achieve absolute perfection. The first person to run on the approach and hug him was his wife. We're glad you came back, Pete. I'd like to take a moment and talk about striking. In case you didn't think it was, it is hard. Professionals average about 225 a game, meaning they also average around 7-ish strikes a game. On any given frame, a bowler has about a 58% chance of striking. Let me reiterate, the highest performing professionals have slightly over a 50-50 shot of striking. Even when they are performing above average, say around 260, they average 9 strikes a game, giving them only a 75% chance. Striking is never a guarantee. Let's start with the slightly worse odds of 58%. Your odds of getting 2 in a row drop to 33. 3 in a row drops to 19, and you can imagine how thin the needle that the pros need to thread can get. By the 12th strike, the chances are around 0.1%, which is what makes getting a 300 so alluring. Hard work is everything in bowling. The pros put in hundreds, if not thousands of hours of practice to try and bump that strike percentage up. Bob Benoit in 1988 had his hard work pay off sooner than others expect, when he shot 300 on television in his first year of being on tour and his very first televised event to win his very first title. I think the commentator puts the odds of a 300 into words here.
This is where years of practice come into play. There's really not much you can think about. It's all natural ability. Keep your eyes on your target and hope the dear Lord wants you to have it.
There it is.
Even after the 300, Bob cannot believe it. He can't fathom how he just did it the very first time he ever possibly could have tried.
Oh, I don't know what to say. I'm just ecstatic here. I don't understand what's going on, but whatever it is, I hope it doesn't ever leave me.
On the opposite end of the spectrum, in 1993, Mike Albee shot 300 on his 68th time on television. The other thing is, his opponent was striking too. Back and forth, Mike Albee and David Ozio would not miss. 5th frame, 6th frame, 7th frame. What are the odds they could possibly do it together, on television? Well, that 58% chance compounds to account that they both have to strike, meaning the odds of 24 straight strikes is about 0.0002%. Oh. Never mind. Mike later mentions that he believed every shot he threw was good, but knew that there was no guarantee that there wouldn't be a stubborn corner pin to ruin his perfect streak. With a 279 to 300, they created the highest total scoring match ever accomplished on television, knocking over 579 pins out of a possible 600. Do I think it could happen? Both bowlers in the same game be completely perfect on television. I have reasons to believe it won't, but I'm a fan of impossibilities. Who wouldn't want that to happen? A 300-300 tie on TV? I think that'd be hilarious. One of perhaps the most interesting games comes in 1994. Johnny Petraglia shoots 300 against Walter Ray Williams Jr., but the fascinating aspects have nothing to do with the game itself. I'd like to introduce you to a movie that also came out in 1994, Greedy, which features Michael J. Fox playing an aspiring professional bowler.
I had been coaching Michael J. Fox in a movie. And in the movie, he's trying to make the TV show. And he's in 5th place going into the last game. And I'm in the movie in 8th place. And I shoot 289 in the movie to go from 8th to 5th and knock him off the show.
Danny Petraglia just finished with a 289. What?
And going into the last game, I'm in 8th place. And for real, as the movie is premiering in the theaters. And I shoot 279 to make the show and go from 8th to 5th, which is really scary.
That is some weird bowling voodoo stuff that I've never witnessed before and probably never will witness again in my life. But there's another important thing you should know about Johnny. Here we have a list of every bowler that shot 300, organized by how many years they were in the PBA before they actually did the thing. As you can see, a couple guys did it the same year they joined, a vast majority took a few years to get their act together, and then there's Johnny, who took 25 years in the PBA to shoot 300. Technically it's 26, as he joined in 1965, bowled for a year, and then joined the Army to fight in the Vietnam War, then proceeded to come back in 1969. I mean, I can't even begin to understand it. How did any of this happen? First things first, I would like to point out that Butch Soper is short. Oh my god, he is 5'6". Look at him standing next to this guy. Look at him! Anyway, the next 300 also came in 1994, making it the first ever time we'd received 2 of them in the same year. And for this historical 300, it would be bowled against Bob Benoit. Wait. No, that's not right.
For sure to make mention of that, but he's close.
Oh, wow, okay. Butch Soper is about to shoot 300 against one of the very few that have already done it. Plus, he's gonna do it for the guy who did it on his very first attempt. It's been 6 years since Bob's 300. Plus, there were nearly a dozen 300s during that tournament alone, which seemed to be all the more reason for him to do it on live television.
Thanks, everybody. You know, I've been making shows for like 20-something years, and Like this week, there was 11 300 games bowled. I'm thinking, damn, I'm due. And my mom always said that, Butch, why don't you ever shoot 300 on TV? Well, Mom, this is for you. Tell you.
Okay, let's take a step back. We are 8 300s in. So far, we've had a guy lose immediately after, a guy win it all against future Hall of Famers, a guy deal with a lane breakdown prior to the match, and a guy have his own personal breakdown years before he ever did it. We've had someone shoot 300 on their first try, and someone shoot it on their 68. Someone recreate their own participation in a movie into reality, and lastly, a guy shoot 300 against one of the few that have already shot 300. Every single one of these tells a new story. Every single one has its own important lesson to learn, and there'll be more lessons to come in the next part.
$1,000 ball. Let's watch this ball close, Ted. It's out. Oh.
Strike number 13.
Oh, he pulled it up.
We have it! We have it! Oh, yes! Mike Colby.